In a small town where whispers cut deeper than knives, a quiet woman named Clara walked with her head bowed, ignored by those who thought they knew her worth. They called her weak, a nobody, a shadow in their world of wealth and pride. But beneath, her tattered coat lay a secret so powerful it would shatter their smug illusions. When the will was read, their laughter turned to shock, their scorn to silence. Clara wasn't helpless. She was the key to everything. This is the story of how one woman's truth turned a town upside down. Clara Evans lived on the edge of Willow Creek, a town draped in old money and older grudges. Her small, weathered cabin sat at the end of a dirt road, its sagging porch a testament to years of neglect. She was 42, with graying hair tied in a loose bun, her hands calloused from years of cleaning houses for the town's elite. To them, Clara was invisible, a woman who scrubbed their floors, mended their clothes, and never spoke out of turn. Her faded dresses and quiet demeanor made her an easy target for their pitying glances and whispered judgments. Poor Clara. They'd say, no family, no future, just a life of servitude. But Clara wasn't born in Willow Creek. She'd arrived 20 years ago, a stranger with no past anyone cared to ask about. The townsfolk assumed she was running from something, poverty, shame, or worse. They didn't care to know. To them, she was just the help, someone who existed to serve and fade away. Yet Clara's eyes, sharp and knowing, held a story she never told. She listened as the wealthy families bickered over their fortunes, their voices dripping with entitlement. She heard their secrets, their betrayals, their greed, and she kept them locked away in her heart. The town revolved around the Hawthorne family, whose sprawling mansion overlooked Willow Creek like a king's castle. Old man Hawthorne, the patriarch, had died a week ago, leaving behind a fortune that had everyone buzzing. His children, Margaret, Charles, and Evelyn, paraded through town, already spending their expected inheritance in their minds. They treated Clara like a ghost, tossing her their laundry without a glance. But Clara noticed things they didn't. The way old man Hawthorne had watched her work, his eyes lingering with something like respect. She'd never spoken to him beyond a polite nod, but she felt his gaze, heavy with unspoken words. The will reading was set for Saturday at the Hawthorne mansion. The town was alive with gossip. Who would get the estate, the money, the power? No one spared a thought for Clara except to mock her presence. "What's she doing there?" they sneered as she walked toward the mansion, her coat threadbare, against the autumn chill. They thought she was there to serve coffee, to clean up after their triumph. They were wrong. The Hawthorne mansion gleamed under the morning sun, its marble floors reflecting the chandelier's golden light. The grand parlor was packed with Willow Creek's elite, their tailored suits and glittering jewelry a stark contrast to Clara's worn boots. Margaret, the eldest Hawthorne, stood by the fireplace, her lips curled in a smug smile. Charles paced, his watch glinting as he checked the time. Evelyn, the youngest, whispered to her husband, her eyes darting to the lawyer's briefcase. They were vultures, circling the fortune they believed was theirs. Clara stood at the back, near the door, her hands clasped tightly. The townsfolk barely noticed her, their voices a low hum of anticipation. The lawyer, Mr. Grayson, a stern man with wire-rimmed glasses, cleared his throat and opened the leather-bound will. The room fell silent, every eye fixed on him. Clara's heart pounded, but her face remained still, a mask of calm. She'd been summoned here, though no one knew why. The invitation had come in a sealed envelope, slipped under her cabin door 2 nights ago. She hadn't slept since. Mr. Grayson began reading, his voice steady but cold. The minor bequests came first: charities, distant cousins, a few loyal servants. The Hawthornes shifted impatiently, waiting for their names. Clara's name wasn't mentioned, and the whispers grew louder. "Why is she here?" Margaret hissed to Charles, loud enough for Clara to hear. Evelyn smirked, her diamond earrings catching the light. Clara's fingers tightened around the edge of her coat, but she didn't flinch. She'd endured worse than their scorn. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the mansion's tall windows. The room felt smaller, the air thick with greed. Clara's mind drifted to the years she'd spent in Willow Creek, the countless nights she'd sat alone in her cabin, piecing together fragments of a life no one cared to understand. She'd come here to escape, to rebuild, but the town had tried to break her instead. Yet she'd stayed, not because she was weak, but because she was waiting. For what? Even she wasn't sure. Until now. The lawyer's voice sharpened as he reached the final page. The room leaned forward, breaths held. Clara's eyes met Mr. Grayson's for a fleeting moment, and she saw something there. Recognition, perhaps, or pity. She straightened her spine, ready for whatever came next. The truth was about to unravel, and it would burn through this room, like wildfire. Mr. Grayson's voice cut through the tension like a blade. To my children, Margaret, Charles, and Evelyn, I leave my gratitude for the years we shared, but no further inheritance. Gasps erupted. Margaret's face drained. Of color, Charles froze mid-step, and Evelyn's hand flew to her mouth. The room buzzed with shock, the townsfolk exchanging stunned glances. Clara stood still, her heart racing but her expression unchanged. The lawyer continued, his words deliberate. The entirety of my estate, my wealth, properties, and holdings goes to Clara Evans, who has shown loyalty and strength beyond measure. The room exploded into chaos. Margaret shrieked, her voice a mix of rage and disbelief. Charles slammed his fist on a table, toppling a crystal vase. Evelyn sobbed, her husband pulling her close. The townsfolk turned to Clara, their eyes wide with confusion and contempt. Her? They whispered. The maid. Clara felt their stares like daggers, but she didn't move. She'd known this moment might come, though she hadn't dared believe it. Old Man Hawthorne had seen her, truly seen her, in a way no one else had. Years ago, Clara had saved his life. It was a quiet night, the mansion empty except for her and Hawthorne. She'd been cleaning late, as usual, when she found him collapsed in his study, his face pale, his breathing shallow. She'd called for help, stayed by his side, her steady hands keeping him calm until the ambulance arrived. He'd never spoken of it after, but his eyes had changed when he looked at her. Gratitude, perhaps, or something deeper. Clara had never asked for recognition, she didn't trust attention, but Hawthorne had remembered. Now, the truth hung heavy in the air. The Hawthorne's fortune, millions in cash, the mansion, the sprawling lands, was hers. The townsfolk's. Whispers turned venomous. She must have tricked him, they muttered. A nobody like her? But Clara's gaze was steady, her silence louder than their accusations. She'd earned this, not through schemes, but through years of quiet resilience. The lawyer handed her the will, his nod almost imperceptible. Clara took it, her fingers trembling not with fear, but with the weight of her new reality. The days after the will reading were a storm. Willow Creek turned on Clara like a pack of wolves. The Hawthornes led the charge, spreading rumors that she'd manipulated Old Man Hawthorne, that she'd poisoned his mind. Margaret cornered her. At the general store, her voice low and vicious, accusing her of theft. Charles wrote letters to the local paper, calling her a fraud. Evelyn's friends shunned her, their eyes cold as Clara passed by. The town that had ignored her now obsessed over her, their resentment a living thing. Clara's cabin became a fortress. She locked her doors, drew her curtains, and sat by the fire, the will tucked safely in a tin box under her bed. She didn't want the money for its own sake. She'd never cared for wealth. But it was her shield, her proof that she wasn't nothing. The townsfolk didn't understand. They saw her as an intruder, a thief who'd stolen their golden family's legacy. But Clara knew the truth. Hawthorne had chosen her because he saw her strength, her heart, when no one else did. At night, she'd walk to the edge of her property, staring at the distant lights of the Hawthorne mansion. Her mansion now, though. She hadn't set foot inside since the reading. She remembered the years of scrubbing its floors, the way the Hawthornes had dismissed her. She'd heard their secrets, Margaret's affairs, Charles's gambling debts, Evelyn's cruel gossip. She'd kept silent, not out of fear, but because she knew her time would come. And it had. The town's anger grew, but so did Clara's. Resolve. She hired a lawyer, a quiet man from the next county who believed her story. He warned her of legal battles ahead. The Hawthornes were contesting the will, claiming fraud. Clara nodded, her jaw set. She'd fought harder battles than this ones no one saw. She'd survived a childhood of loss, a marriage that broke her, and a town that tried to erase her. This was just another fight. The courthouse was packed on the day of the hearing. The Hawthorns sat in the front row, their faces a mask of righteous fury. Clara sat alone, her hands folded, her worn coat replaced by a simple dress she'd sewn herself. The townsfolk filled the seats, their whispers like a swarm of bees. The judge, an older woman with sharp eyes, called for order. Clara's lawyer presented the will, its pages worn but undeniable. The Hawthorns' lawyer argued manipulation, but his evidence was thin, gossip, not facts. Then came the letter. Clara's lawyer produced it, a handwritten note from Old Man Hawthorne, sealed and notarized. It detailed the night Clara saved him, her quiet courage, and his decision to reward her. "She is the only one who saw me as a man, not a fortune," he wrote. The courtroom fell silent as the judge read it, aloud. Margaret's face crumpled, Charles looked away, and Evelyn's tears were no longer for show. The truth was undeniable. Clara was no thief. The judge ruled in Clara's favor. The will stood. The crowd murmured, some with shame, others with lingering resentment. Clara didn't look at them. She thanked her lawyer and walked out, the weight of their stares lighter now. The truth had set her free, not just from their accusations, but from the years of being unseen. She was no longer the helpless woman they'd mocked. She was Clara Evans, the heir. Clara moved into the Hawthorne mansion a month later. The townsfolk watched, some with curiosity, others with envy. She didn't flaunt her wealth. She kept the mansion simple, its grandeur softened by wildflowers she planted herself. She donated part of the fortune to the town's orphanage, the library, the school, places that had once been her refuge. She hired locals to maintain the estate, paying them fairly, treating them with the respect she'd never received. The Hawthorns left Willow Creek, their pride shattered. Margaret moved to the city, Charles to a smaller town, Evelyn to her husband's family. The town slowly changed, its gossip quieter now, its judgment softer. Clara didn't seek their approval. She walked through Willow Creek with her head high, her steps steady. She'd always been strong, but now they saw it. At night, Clara sat in the mansion's study, the same room where she'd saved Hawthorne's life. She'd kept his old chair, a reminder of the man who'd seen her worth. The town might never fully accept her, but she didn't need them to. She had her truth, her strength, and a future she'd build on her own terms. Clara Evans wasn't helpless. She was unstoppable.